Hello and welcome back to the world of the spirit consciousness. We are in the middle of the book study session on the astral body and other astral phenomena. We are in the middle of the 16th module, which deals with the mastery of emotion. In this particular video section, we will be discussing a summary of a book on collective or crowd consciousness. So, diving straight into the subject, this subject will have four subtopics to it: the introduction, losing individuality to a group, the types of leaders, and importance of thinking for yourself. Coming into the introduction, so collective or crowd consciousness is also an important study matter for those whose goal is to attain self knowledge, to attain self mastery. The Crowd in Peace and War by Sir Martin Conway is the best book in this matter recommended by the author. Sir Martin illustrates the following important facts with great comprehension and ample illustrations. The below given points are only a very brief description of the leading principles listed in the very useful and reliable book mentioned. The student must surely study that book in detail for himself or herself. Studying these books will help the student understand how the public opinion, is influenced also to evaluate their own opinions and beliefs. So coming to about losing individuality to a group, so majority of people are raised in and belong to a specific psychological crowd throughout their lives. These crowds think and feel in a similar way. Examples of such crowd include those of family and friends, colleagues, schools, colleges, universities, schools of thought, religion, political parties, nations, etc. So these crowds are majorly governed by emotions or feelings rather than by thought. They can feel the emotion but can't think. Such opinions are rarely backed by reason. Instead, the opinions are formed by the emotions which pass through the body like an electric current, having usually originated from a single individual. As the individual joins the crowd, she or he quickly begins losing the capacity to think and feel individually and assimilates with the crowd, sharing its attitudes, prejudices, opinions, etc. So rarely people are brave enough to separate from the different crowds which they belong to. Majority of them remain influenced by the crowds for the rest of their lives. The author then enlists and describes the several kinds of crowds and how their virtue is so different from that of the individual. On an overall basis, a crowd is substantially lower in level and a lot more primitive. So let us see the types of leaders which you would see with crowds. The crowd can't lead itself and find someone who can. So there are mainly three types of such leaders: the crowd compeller, the crowd exponent, and the crowd representative. So let us evaluate each of them, starting with the crowd compeller. The crowd compeller rules and leads a crowd by dictating his own ideas to it with the help of his powerful personality. The examples include Napoleon, Julius Caesar, Disraeli, and Charlemagne. The crowd component is very different from the crowd compeller. So such a person feels where the crowd is swaying or where it will be more inclined to, and distinctly expresses the emotions of the crowd which is unexpressed on its own. Such leaders rarely contemplate problems on their own before giving their verdict. Instead, they wait for the crowd to build up an emotion. So, when the emotion is thick in the crowd, the leader expresses them in a persuasive, powerful, and zealous way. Instances of such leaders are extremely common in the field of politics. Then you have the crowd representative, which is a kind of a crowd leader which is an impressive figurehead instead of an individual force. Such an example could be a consul or an ambassador. So these leaders are simply the voice of the people. They are the personification of public opinion. They act for the people and support the people in public view. The crowd representative must not express the individual opinions and should look as if they feel exactly what the people are feeling and conform to people's emotions and wishes. So, having seen the types of leaders and about how a group has a different kind of a thought process, now let us see the importance of thinking for yourself. So, it is extremely vital for an occult student to act consciously and intentionally on all his or her thoughts and feelings. The Greek saying "gnosis yoda" means know thyself is a very useful advice. This is because self-knowledge is essential to anyone who wants to progress. So an occult student shouldn't get carried away by the thoughts and emotions of the collective crowd. The collective crowd filters everything and then manifests itself and influences the crowd which the student is a part of. It is difficult to stand against the popular belief which is so strong. It is also difficult to rebel against the thought forms and the thought currents filled in the atmosphere, which are constantly trying to influence us. Also, she or he should be able to identify the different kinds of crowd leaders and must be careful not to get influenced, persuaded, or dominated to accept their ideas. This is unless the student does so consciously and with all his or her own powers active. The psychological crowds and crowd leaders have a major influence in the world, generation after generation, and this influence has a low key but a wide impact. A student who wants to attain self mastery and wants to have their own emotional and intellectual life must be careful not to let these influences creep in. So with that, we come to an end of the summary of book on collective or crowd consciousness. Stay tuned for the next video, which is a book summary on the law of psychic phenomena.